Okay, so I'm going live now. Okay, so it says, okay, can we quickly check if this is going live for you guys as well on Facebook? Because I can see that it's going live.
I'm just trying.
Well, it says it's live. Okay. All right. Assalamu alaikum. This is Samar Hassan, co-founder and CEO of Epiphany. And we are now back live with our third session of Epiphany Talks. And this one is a especially interesting one because we're actually talking about social entrepreneurship and COVID-19. What are the opportunities for the future? What are the present challenges that we've managed to overcome as well? And with me, I'm really, really excited because I've got my co-moderator and co-host of this particular session with me, Dr. Nirmal De Silva. So welcome, Nirmal. Could you introduce yourself briefly so our audience knows who you are?
Aiban Sama, good afternoon to you. Pleasure to be here. Fantastic to have a chat with some power ladies of South Asia who is doing wonderful stuff in social entrepreneurship. So just a quick intro. I'm a serial entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur, and impact investor. I'm also an associate professor of business for multiple universities in visiting capacity. Such a pleasure to be here, Sama. Hope all is well with you.
Yes, absolutely. Everything is well. I think we've overcome the first initial, let's say, maybe 1 or 2 days of despair, or, well, I wouldn't say despair, but kind of like being a little demotivated. And now I think we're back with a bang and we're kind of thinking about what we can do for the community. So I think one of the biggest things that social entrepreneurs do, we are in a way beacons of light for the communities that we have surrounded ourselves with, and the communities that we try and impact through our work. And I think for those communities, because we're so vested in the progress of those communities, I think we're able to look on the bright side, look on the silver lining, and really respond very, very actively. So with me, I am delighted to have somebody who's made a huge contribution, who's been making a huge contribution in the Pakistani entrepreneurship ecosystem as well as the health tech ecosystem. And I would love to introduce you to Dr. Sara Saeed. So, hello, Dr. Sara, how are you?
Hello, I'm well.
Okay.
Hope you're well, Samar and Dr. Nirmal.
Yes, very well indeed. So Sara is the co-founder and CEO of Sehat Kahani, and we'll hear from her in a minute when she introduces herself and tells us what she's been up to. In the meantime, I would now like to invite Savera, who has joined us also from Sri Lanka. Hello, Savera, how are you?
Hi, Samar. Hi, Nirmal. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great. Thank you.
Okay, and our last, but not the least panelist today is Azima Dhanji, who is the co-founder and CEO of Connect Here. All right, so ladies, do you want to introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about the impact that you've been creating in your communities? Sara, would you like to go first?
Sure. So I run a telemedicine platform and a social enterprise called Sehat Kahani. Sehat means health in Urdu and Kahani means story. And through our platform, we connect female doctors who were previously out of the workforce and could not work due to socio-cultural constraints in the country. And we reintegrate them back into the workforce and connect them to patients who need healthcare using telemedicine. Pakistan has totally 170,000 doctors, out of which 60% are females, but only 23% works. That means we have around 90,000 female doctors who are sitting at home not working. And ironically, we have around 75% people in Pakistan who don't get access to healthcare or a qualified doctor. So we connect these two gaps together through technology. We have two business lines. So for low-income communities where people don't have access to technology or smartphones, we create nurse-led telemedicine clinics. In these clinics, we train nurses so that when patients come to them, they can connect the patient to the online doctor. Similarly, for people who have access to technology and smartphones, we have a mobile application that can be downloaded by the masses and can be used to get consultation with a female doctor in less than 3 clicks. We have 26 clinics across Pakistan, and we have in totality impacted or consulted around 150,000 plus patients through our app as well as our clinics.
Okay, that's fantastic. And we're eager to see what happened in the COVID crisis in our next question and how you responded to the challenges. Okay, Savera, over to you. Could you explain a little bit about your startup, your enterprise, actually?
Sure. I first want to congratulate Sarah. That sounds amazing on the work. But Ananta Sustainables is the startup I run, which sources and supplies compostable packaging primarily for the hospitality industry. It's a small startup just trying to make sustainable packaging more accessible for anyone who wants it. And while we're doing that, also we started doing a lot of community projects around plastic waste and conscious consumption in various communities, and started a coalition, co-founded a coalition for sustainable waste management with citizen groups and sustainable businesses, state institutions. So we're currently working on a documentary telling kind of the story of waste and who's impacted around Sri Lanka. And during COVID times, been quite excited working with people in the social enterprise sphere here in Sri Lanka and Nepal, trying to say how can we create a language and share values and show what our priorities are beyond short-term profit maximization, which seems to be the status quo in a lot of spaces. So that's been really exciting.
Thank you very much, Savera. I think your work is very, very exciting. And I'm eager to learn more from you. So Azima, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Azima, and like Summer mentioned, I'm the CEO co-founder of Connect Here. Connect Here works for the deaf population in the country. A little about myself. My parents are deaf. That kind of influenced me into getting into this space because I was always bothered by how little people were doing for the deaf community and how isolated they were. So we started Connect Here, and our major focus is to increase sign language literacy and deaf inclusion in Pakistan. So wherever something is happening and we feel like that the deaf community should be involved in it as well, we start working in that space and ensuring that the accessibility is present. Our major service includes providing video-based sign language interpretation service. So if a deaf person is present anywhere in Pakistan or even abroad and knows Pakistani sign language, they get connected to our sign language interpreters who on call, on mobile phone, on laptop, interprets for them right there and then. So that's kind of helping them to have instant accessibility and independence that they deserve. Other than that, we do different events. We have done it in the past, like we have done an inclusive concert. We ensured that when elections were happening in Pakistan, they were inclusive and accessible for the deaf community as well. They were knowing whatever communication is happening. So this is just something that my entire team is really passionate about, ensuring that all the deaf people have all the information that is needed.
Okay, so Nirmal, do you want to ask the first question?
Yes, why not? Once again, ladies, very inspirational stories indeed. Well done. You're keeping your communities proud and your countries proud. I want to first take an opportunity to wish Savera happy birthday.
Happy birthday!
Thank you.
So, happy birthday from everybody watching this as well. So, my first question to Dr. Sahara. Now, COVID-19 has seen a huge impact in terms of healthcare. And especially when you look at countries in South Asia, and especially in rural populations, access to healthcare and quality healthcare is a bit of an issue. And we see telemedicine and other health tech related platforms really working hard these days. So, from your perspective and your experience alongside social distancing norms, what are some of the challenges that you've seen in Pakistan in particular, as well as how has the COVID-19 response been, and how have you been able to adapt to these impacts from your social enterprise point of view?
So I think COVID-19 first case was diagnosed on 26 February, and kind of early March, seeing the history and the way it was spreading in different populations and different countries, we were able to predict what's going to happen in Pakistan also. Also, the healthcare system in Pakistan is pretty fragmented, and we knew as healthcare professionals and people who work in public health is that we don't have the same testing ability as most of the more other countries in the world, for example, Germany or Japan or Italy or America. So there'll always be a point where there will be reduced testing. That means that a lot of people won't get diagnosed, and that ultimately affects how we can control spreading of the virus. Also, a large part of our country lives in rural populations. Around 60% of our country lives in rural populations, and administering social distancing for people who live in combined households with common room sharing is not as possible, as we are seeing right now, that even with lockdowns, we haven't really been able to effectuate it because we kind of live in a joint family system. And as we go in more rural, that joint family system and that family size keeps increasing. So we all knew that we had to make this virus stop spreading, doing interventions before we can reach to a stage where more people are needing hospitalization. And as telemedicine is one tool that can really help to keep a patient at home in this situation and limit their exposure to a hospital, because when you're going to a hospital and if you are COVID-19 positive, you are also exposing yourself, but you're also exposing doctors and other people who are visiting the hospitals. Also, in mid-March, when the COVID-19 was going towards its peak, there was a lockdown in which outpatient departments in hospitals and all non-essential OPDs were also closed down. So even people who didn't have COVID-19 but had health issues did not have a doctor to reach out to. So that's a double problem, because Pakistan has very, very bad health indicators. So maternal mortality, infant mortality, cardiac issues, diabetic issues, they are prevalent in our population, otherwise COVID as well. So now there's a double load on healthcare system, the existing healthcare issues as well as COVID-19. So I think the whole country and the government also came together in formulating a strategy by which we can stop the spread. And telemedicine platforms, suddenly there were a lot of new telemedicine platforms, which initiated a lot of telemedicine platforms coming on WhatsApp and Skype and Facebook, which is something I'm a little against of. But what we did was, we have two parts of our work. We have our clinics for low-income communities as well as our mobile application for masses. Now, in my organization, it was a mixed feeling because my clinics closed down because of the lockdown. We couldn't work in the low-income communities anymore. And my own organization was in a bit of a dilemma that how can we help now? Because the app that we have is pretty new. It's only 6 months old. And we hadn't really gone in with a full marketing plan or full outreach for the app till now. But then we came together as a team in a week and we strategized that what we can do is we can create much more impact through our app right now than our clinics. So we partnered with the government of Pakistan's entity called Digital Pakistan, which is led by Tania Idris, who's the special assistant to the Prime Minister for digital initiatives. And what we did was we told them that we will make our app free for the next 3 months for any patient to use from anywhere in the world, including in and outside Pakistan. And we will not charge them till June 30th, 2020. We also trained all our doctors on COVID-19 screening, counseling, and triaging. So all our doctors are able to recognize when a patient calls in on the app that they can identify the symptoms. They can counsel them for home quarantine. They can send them to isolation centers, quarantine centers, and they can even report back the data to the government to increase the possibility of TTQ, which is testing, tracking, and quarantine, which is the strategy that the government has now. What it did was, before COVID-19, we used to see 50, 60 patients on a good day on the application because it was pretty new and we were trying to create a market for it. When COVID-19 hit, now our daily average is around 500, 600 patients a day, partly because the app became free, but also because people immediately realized that they can't get out of the house, but they still need a doctor. So yes, we get a lot of calls for COVID-19 patients, but we get a lot of calls for primary healthcare issues with elderly, with pregnant women. People burn their hands, they don't know where to go. Children fall off the stairs, they don't know where to go. Someone in Balochistan had a heart attack two days ago. They didn't know where to go. So all these issues we are catering towards our app. And we offered the same service to corporates as well. So we knew that there are a lot of corporate employees who are also going to suffer because their companies are not going to provide them adequate health coverage at this point. So we also created a corporate package ensuring corporate employees for healthcare services for 3 months, absolutely free of cost for GP services, and then continuing an yearly package. And that has made us sign us 27 corporates in just 20 days. So I think telemedicine is a great enabler, and it can enable so many solutions that were unheard before. My now challenge is, how do we get telemedicine to our rural communities? What is that one strategy that we can pick out, that the same app that we have can be in the hand of health workers and they can use it to bring healthcare to their communities? And this is the new challenge that I'm working on.
Thanks, Dr. Sara. I think we'll talk about what are those strategies that you could adopt maybe in the last stages of this webinar. But it's fantastic. Two things that I picked up with what you did. For any enterprise or entrepreneur, agility is the key, and adaptability to changes is the key. It seems like you and your team has been able to do that, which is wonderful news. Also, it's about creating impact and walking the talk. So allowing 3 months of free access to your app at this time shows what social enterprises and the power of social enterprises. Thanks for that thoughts, Dr. Sara. I'll quickly go into Azima now. You work in a very niche type of an area, often an area that people don't tend to focus on. What are some of the challenges that you faced when you set up the company and wanted to support the deaf community? And what are some of the challenges that you are facing now as a result of COVID-19?
Thank you for that question, Dr. Nirmal. So you asked me two things. Number one, the general challenges that we faced as a company when we started. And number two being that what are the challenges that we are facing right now and trying to solve during the COVID-19. All right, so when we started, like you mentioned, that it's a very niche group that we are working for. And obviously the idea started because I was personally affected by it. It was in my family and I wanted to do something about it. When I started, the number one challenge was that there wasn't that many people in the country thinking about this cause. So, which is why, like, we had to not only come up with the solutions, but also create a market for it at the very, very same time. So we had to educate people, we had to create awareness. There were people who belonged to deaf families and they knew sign language, but they never knew that they could use this skill as a proper profession and become a sign language interpreter. So here we also had to look out for people like those who could join us as sign language interpreters. So I always tell people that we didn't only come in the market with the solution that we're going to interpret for deaf people. We realized that we have to teach sign language. We have to find people who'd be equally passionate about it. We need to educate the deaf people that you don't only have to depend on your hearing family members, but you can also do everything independently. Even so that the people around the country, they never knew that the common terminologies are deaf and hearing. It's not deaf and dumb and normal, because deaf people are also normal. So the awareness was insanely low. So we had to work through all of those things, and the support we received from the community itself, the deaf community itself, was brilliant. Like, they were pushing us, they became our ambassadors. They would go to places, to hearing communities, and tell them that we want to be a part of your program as well. Why don't you get a sign language interpreter? So I think it was a collaborative effort, and it was nothing that I, as Azima, as being the only person passionate about it, could have done it. market. And now it's crazy because now we don't only have a market, but we also have competitors in the market who are doing the same thing, which they weren't doing before. So it's like more people are believing in the cause. They're identifying that though it's a niche, it's a smaller market than the other industries, but it is important to work for them. I hope that kind of tells about the challenges that we faced in the beginning. Now, talking about COVID-19, when COVID-19 started, we realized that the government and the people around, they were doing so much. Like the country just came together to do so much to ensure that everyone is informed. But then again, all the videos, all the information that were being translated, they weren't accessible for the deaf community. So this is where our role became very, very significant. We all are working from home. My entire team's working from home. We started shooting videos from, like, this is my background, the white background that you can see. I shoot all my videos here. I asked my brother to help me. He holds the camera and he shoots me recording 20, 25 minutes of speeches that are being given by the Chief Minister of Sindh, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, because the numbers that they're talking about, the precaution measures that they're talking about, you know, they're telling that in one car there could be only 2 people, but who's going to give that information to the deaf community? What if they get out in the car with 4 people and, you know, the police will catch them, but they're not informed about it? So this gap, we're definitely trying to fill it in. We are trying to produce more and more videos, and it's very fortunate that the government of Sindh has also highlighted our work. We have been working with PDMA Sindh. They're helping us to promote our content and share it further. But of course, like Dr. Sara mentioned, that there are people in rural areas who don't have the technology necessarily. Just like that, us putting up videos on Facebook and YouTube doesn't really mean that the people in the rural areas are also watching it. So which is why we're pushing the Sindh government, especially right now, to have our interpreters with the CM while he gives press conferences and stuff. So this is something that we are still, it's a challenge for us, but we're still trying to do our best. The second thing that we realized that was very important to do was like collaborations, because like Dr. Sara mentioned about Sehat Kahani and having the telemedicine free for all the individuals. And we realized that it would be brilliant if we collaborate with Sehat Kahani to ensure that the deaf people, if they want health services, they could have accessibility towards that as well. So like, I'm super grateful of Dr. Sara, because all it took was one phone call. We discussed it over one phone call and we made it happen. Her entire team, my entire team worked on it together. And right now we're collaborating with Sehat Kahani to ensure that every deaf person, if they feel sick, if they need to have accessibility to talk to a doctor, they just call into our call center, to our interpreters, and our interpreters connect them to Sehat Kahani. So this is something that we wouldn't have been able to do alone, but collaborating with another enterprise who's motivated about a social cause kind of opened the door for us, and we are super grateful about it. So I think we have been constantly, it's not only me, it's my entire team. Every day they come up with new ideas that, hey, we should do this for deaf community, we should do that for, and then we collaborate, we make sure that the accessibility is there for them, even in such tough times where people are so concerned about the hearing community that they kind of tend to forget the people with disabilities.
Thanks, Asima. Before I give it over to you, Sama, to ask you a question from Savera, just 2 points that I want to get the viewers and the listeners to take note. So the power of collaboration, and I see across the world, most of the social enterprises working together and collaborating with each other, at times even with competitors. Sadly, in traditional enterprises, we don't see that collaboration happening even now. So that's a key point to note. And also, Asima, maybe in the last stage, we'll discuss a little bit about some of the new technologies, how artificial intelligence and so forth can really help your type of businesses moving forward. Over to you, Sama.
Okay, so very quickly, right? Just to summarize, there is one very, very important point that came out with both Sehat Kahani as well as Connect Here. The role of the government, or I would rather say the recognition by the government of the role of social enterprises. And I think that's something which has been really, really positive. Amidst the COVID-19 crisis, suddenly the government has realized the value of social entrepreneurs and the existing work that they were doing on the ground. Because obviously, as we know, the people who were most deeply affected are also the daily wages, are also the people who are marginalized. And just by design, social enterprises primarily support the communities that need that support, and they sometimes fall amongst the most vulnerable portions of society. So in both these examples, I think this is something to take away, that from now, I think post-COVID world, we will continue to see this trend, because now Sarah and Azima and Risk, everybody has done something which, you know, all of us were trying to move towards or were fighting for, and now it's happened automatically, right? And the same thing with you, Savera. I now want to hear your kind of experience of what happened in light of COVID-19. And before, when we were chatting, you asked me, should I focus on the difficult part or should I focus on the positive bit, because there's been so much positive happening as well. So go ahead and tell us about the positive, and you know how you overcome the challenges into opportunities.
Sure. Yeah, I think for us, I mean, when we were looking at just the background of it, is when we were looking at, you know, this waste crisis that, and I guess crisis is not the right word in this current immediate crisis situation, but when we looked at it, where we thought we could, you know, try to solve this problem or even start attacking it, was in an essential goods kind of space. So in terms of in this kind of quarantine isolation period where there's curfew in Sri Lanka, we are still, you know, very minimally but in business, because we provide packaging for food, which is an essential item in terms of, you know, getting access to people. And it's the takeaway space, takeout spaces is still happening. And our business is really lean, so I think that's a huge benefit or advantage for anyone in this kind of startup. Social enterprises usually are quite small and lean and adjusting, because if you're trying to solve an issue, you know that the nature of the issue is going to keep changing. And so I think for me, the really optimistic thing is that this has been a catalyst for people who have their values aligned to start speaking about it and look to collaborate. I mean, Azima and Sarah are a great example of that, and I see that happening everywhere. And I think in terms of Nirmal's question of collaboration, it's the difference is in a general sense, you know, we aren't transparent about a lot of businesses aren't transparent about their priorities, you know, why they're doing business. It's kind of taken for granted that, you know, they're doing this to make profit. Whereas as a social enterprise, you're saying these people are our priority, you know, this environment is our priority, this demographic is our priority. And so when you're collaborating, you're already saying, here are my priorities and here's what I can contribute. So therefore, it's already open that the trust that's missing in the general systems is already there. You know that Azima can pick up the phone, and you know that Sarah is aligned with what needs to happen and that she wants to help. So that, I think, is I think that is going to be hopefully the moving factor with, you know, where social enterprise isn't a sector, but it is the way economies function, where, you know, it is collaboration over competition, because there's so many spaces that we need to fill, and competing is not going to get us very far when we have so much communication. So I'm really excited about that in terms of, you know, ecosystems reaching out and, you know, catalyzing what needed to happen anyway. And as you said, Summer, these are unprecedented times, and anyone in, you know, the social enterprise sphere has been working against the current for unprecedented change. So I think this is a great time for all of us to harness it, and that, for me, is a great opportunity and very exciting.
Thank you so much, Savera. And I think all five of us are very, very optimistic, because I think we can see it happening. I think the work that all of us were doing in our communities already, suddenly with, for instance, Digital Pakistan, it's gone national, right? Maybe earlier we were having some trouble overcoming certain barriers, but that's happening. Now, particularly, Savera, follow-up question for you. In terms of the work that you do, Ananta Sustainables, so what, did you see a dip in your customer demand? Did things, you know, become a bit tricky business-wise, or have you seen people, you know, looking towards you even more because they're confused about how to, you know, avail existing mechanisms?
I think there's, a definite dip, because the sad thing is that it's mostly small businesses that prioritize these things, prioritize the fact that they want to bear the cost for something that's sustainable, something that is going to have a positive impact on our environment, and taking that responsibility. The big businesses are not willing to bear the cost as much as the small businesses, ironically. So so for them, access, curfew passes, a lot of those things are really difficult.
It's 4 o'clock.
Sorry about that. That's my procrastination clock. But
Okay. So I was just looking at trying to figure out where is this popping up from. And that's kind of like a scary voice that you've got there. It's 4 o'clock.
Yeah,
oh my
like
God.
the doomsday clock. But no, I think there's been a big dip, because it's the small businesses, and they are with their hands tied behind the back in these times. The small businesses, small families. So there's been a dip, but I think there's been a lot of concern and consciousness and a lot of conversation, and I really appreciate that. And I didn't start the startup to make money off selling packaging. It was more because there was a need and some awareness that needed to happen. So in that space, I'm really happy that these conversations are happening, even for the future, if not now.
So, just a quick kind of like, in a way, just sharing something, which I've noticed, right? So post-COVID, some of us are going to actually trim away the fat. Some of us are becoming much more conscious. We've realized that there is benefit. You can still do all of your meetings online. You didn't necessarily have to travel all the way and waste so much time. So there are certain things, especially when it comes to small businesses, when we recover, right? So there's going to be that time frame that we need to recover. But when we recover, I do expect that some of these practices will continue. And business post-COVID, Savera, I think it may do well. Okay, so we will follow up in, let's say, 3 months, 6 months, whatever. And also we'll come back to you about strategies that when the business goes down and dips a little bit, or we find that we want to, not have to, but we want to offer free services. What are we doing to manage our cash flow? What are some of the strategies? So that will come in, perhaps later. But I know that Nirmal needs to talk again. Okay, it's been a while. So Nirmal, go ahead and ask the other question that we had for our panelists.
Right. Thanks, Amma. I think we are coming into some interesting areas here. Unfortunately, if you look at the millions of webinars which are happening during the lockdown across the world, sadly, not many are focused on social enterprises and social entrepreneurs. Majority of them are on traditional businesses and are on functional areas. If I take an example from Sri Lanka, we got a really good indigenous brand called Celine, something that I'm quite proud about to talk here. They've also been hit as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, but they've now been able to mobilize resources and create WHO standard face masks using their staff and the capacity available. So it seems like social enterprises are able to be a little bit more agile and faster towards the game than most of the other traditional organizations. And not having profit as the priority, but impact as the priority helps in that regard as well. So we've come to the halfway mark of today's program, and I think the next step is to understand a little bit about the opportunities available for the social enterprise space moving forward. In my humble opinion, the new world order will be very much dependent on the impact that social enterprises can create. We see a huge amount of money being allocated now for impact investment purposes prior to COVID-19. I think this is just going to continue to be more moving forward. So I'll start with Savera on this. In terms of your point of view, within the last few weeks, what are some of the market conditions that have changed, and what are some of the new opportunities that you feel might be coming up, A, for your organization, if you look outside the box or think out of the box, and B, in terms of the overall social enterprise space?
That's a big question. I think that I may take a not so traditional look at this, and maybe not the healthiest. I think that for us, it's just looking at the current moment and how we can best serve this moment. Right now, we're not doing too much other than, just moving some inventory into my house so I can service it, so we don't put a burden on couriers and people who are serving essential needs. The other thing is, you were talking about Selena, and I think Selena is such an inspiration because um, she transitioned so fast because her responsibility was to keep the livelihoods of the women she employs. And that's why she transitioned so fast. And so taking kind of inspiration from that, our next goal is so we make paper bags, for example. How can we get those into the homes of women who are daily wage earners, or, get paid on a piece rate? How can we make that possible for them so that, maybe in the future they don't have to come to work at all? Even post COVID, post curfew. So I think I'm in a position to make any predictions over the markets, because I think we're in really unpredictable times. So for me, it's just trying to do what's good today and taking it from there, honestly, because I think that's the role that Ananta and I would like, connecting and seeing what needs to happen and what the need of the hour is in this space. But and same with the social enterprise sector, I would say very quickly, is that everyone is coming together being like, okay, what are the needs that need to be met really quickly? There are amazing people saying, okay, do we need design sprints for social enterprises? Great, we can do it. So the Good Life Accelerator in Sri Lanka is doing that. So everyone is trying to just meet their needs and help each other, and more than anything, just support each other, And I think I need to shout out to the women, because I've just seen so much more collaboration and conversation that's been spoken about openly and freely, and that has got us. And not to single you out here or anything, but it's just something that I've noticed, and I really want to appreciate that in this space, is that vulnerability is and communication is going to get us much further really fast.
Well, of course, Aven, and I tend to agree with you, because we've seen a lot of inspirational stories coming from women. And when you look at the real women empowerment scenario, social enterprises play a very large role. And I agree with you. There is no one size fits all approach. So typically you need to see what's best for your organization, and at times not predicting what the future is and taking it day by day, doing your business plans for the day. Gone are the days that you can do it for 6 months, 12 months. Those are some of the approaches that companies have done. So let me quickly go to Dr. Sara, in terms of one of the points that you talked about, how can you take Sehat Ghani to the rural masses and so forth. One of the things that most telemedicine and health tech applications have is, how do they reach the market? How do you create awareness? And how do you actually get them to start using the platforms? So my first question to you is, have you explored starting to partner with a mobile service provider, so that you can get it on your platform, and then they can even start making the payments eventually when the economy picks up through their mobile phone bills, etc. Because usually with this a smartphone or a feature phone, mobile penetrations are quite high in South Asia. That's my first question to you. And the second question, of course, do you see any other opportunities, new opportunities that has emerged as a result of COVID-19?
So I think on the first question, we already work in rural areas, but our prior model was to create clinics where people can walk in. And that's essentially because people don't have access to smartphones themselves, they don't have data, they don't have internet connectivity. And also mobile payment system in Pakistan is not as advanced in other African countries or other South Asian countries. We're still lagging behind in mobile payments. So people generally pay in cash, even in these communities. So that's one of the reasons why we keep a physical space where people can come in and connect to a doctor. However, this COVID-19 scenario has made us understand that maybe brick and mortar is not the only solution that we can provide, and maybe we need to think out of the box in creating new solutions for the same communities that we were doing before. So one thing which is really interesting is Pakistan has a huge network of peripheral healthcare workers, which are lady health visitors, community midwives, community health workers, midwives, nurses, and all of them are also not being able to work their usual thing, because if they're working in polio or other public healthcare issues, that has taken a back foot. But these all are working with some development sector organizations. The entire peripheral healthcare workforce is under one or two or three public health organizations. So our interest here is to reach out to these organizations, because they're also facing a problem in using these health workers on ground for COVID-19, because they provide maybe family planning or maternal and child healthcare services. But in COVID-19, how will they give the information to the family for COVID-19? So it requires training, it requires counseling. So our major goal is to connect with these organizations who have these health workers, and make sure that we can provide as many lady health workers or community midwives a tablet or a phone, if they don't already have one, internet connectivity, and teach them the mobile application so that they can connect the patient to the online doctor. And this they can do as a financial incentive as well. So we already know how people pay in low income communities and what payability do they have. So we can apply the same, creating that healthcare worker as a virtual clinic in its own, and that's pretty much possible. It's just that we always thought we'll do it, but we never went on doing it because we always had other priorities. But right now we saw that this can be such a big opportunity, because no one essentially is reaching out to those low income and rural areas and giving access to doctors. We do get a lot of calls on our platform, but then that is obviously dependent on people having smartphone and internet technology. Another thing that we're doing is we have a helpline number in which there's customer services available. But we did not have a doctor at the back of the customer services in case someone did not have a smartphone. So we're also developing a system in which our customer services, in the case patient does not have a smartphone, that connect the patient to the doctor through an on-call system, which is something which is going to be one step lower than doing a video consultation, but at least you can do health education, counseling, triaging for COVID-19 in this scenario. I think the third thing is, what are the opportunities that I see post-COVID? I feel there are a lot of opportunities, but a lot of threats also. So in health tech, while it is very positive that it's being used in Pakistan to a degree that I never imagined in the next 5 years, there's also that we don't have a telemedicine policy in place. We don't have a digital health policy on a federal as well as on a provincial level. So that means that anyone who's doing a consultation on WhatsApp and Facebook is as okay as we doing an authentic platform. So I think at this stage, and this is what I'm at any public or government forum, I'm pushing that at this time we need to issue guidelines for telemedicine so that we can have authentic providers doing this, so that we can do more good than harm. Which is what I'm foreseeing in the near future, that if there's more harm than good, then people will be more averse to telemedicine rather than pro it, which is my fear. So I think one opportunity is to finally come together and create a telemedicine policy. The second is the government has to own it. The government has to endorse it. The government has to make sure it's being done in public hospitals. It's being done in BHUs, which are the basic health units, which do not have doctors almost 30% of the time. And the government has to set an example by which the public can actually understand what telemedicine is. Even if one provincial government does it, we can create a very strong case for other provinces to try it as well. And that's what we are doing. The third is, I think a lot of companies are now moving their employee workforce through telemedicine through us and a lot of other providers as well, which is a good market to explore as well, because as a for-profit social enterprise, revenues are much more streamlined when they come from corporate providers or B2B services, which is unheard of in telemedicine in Pakistan. So if we're able to crack that, if we're able to get a lot of corporates on board trying the service as an alternative to outpatient care, that's also a big opportunity to explore. And that gives us another opportunity to perhaps partner with insurance providers to create coupled up products for inpatient and outpatient insurance through telemedicine. So these are just some of the things that we are exploring, but the opportunities in telemedicine are endless right now. And so much can be done.
Thanks, Dr. Sara. So before I go to you, Sama, after we finish the next question with Azima, it will be the chance for us to open up questions from the audience. I can see a few questions already. some very interesting questions as well. Let's see how it goes. Over to you, Sama.
Okay, so all right. So Savera, actually, I wanted to touch upon, you mentioned that, okay, your business did take a bit of a dip, and there must be some strategies that you adopted actually. And we've also got a question which is very similar to that. So I'm just pulling it up over here on the screen as well. In some countries, especially in South Asia, majority of social enterprises are in the MSME level and are also operating away from the commercial businesses. Most of these social enterprises are focused on manufacturing, and the operations of these enterprises have, in some cases, come to a complete halt. So now, maybe drawing upon your own lessons, Savera, how are you staying, how are you staying afloat, and what are some of the strategies that you may have for some of these social entrepreneurs?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, our factories is out of Colombo, so it is very much in non-commercial business capital. I think for us, it has been, I mean, it's taken a big dip where, running at maybe 10% of our usual business, because as I said, a huge customer base is small businesses and in the tourism sector. So once those shut down, everything shuts down. But I think for us, it's, I mean, one of the reasons we started this campaign, Co-Create Tomorrow, was at least if we can start a conversation for this so that there's value placed on it. So if we're not doing business, at least if we can create a conversation around where these values lie, how can we prioritize, and then how can we build the ecosystem. I think it's not valued enough in terms of collaboration, because when we do come out of this current time, at least we'll have stronger ties, stronger avenues, and that's kind of served us well, because those are the customers who've stayed even during this curfew, the ones who have got curfew passes, and they're part of the community. They're the ones who have aligned their values and are not willing to move away from those values. So I think in this time, having those conversations about values and connecting and collaborating with people, not just in your kind of vertical, but also in adjoining verticals and looking at values. I can't stress on values enough, especially in times like this, because I think a loss of them has brought us to the grinding, shocking halt that we're in right now.
And how would you reflect upon the opportunities that you see for social enterprises post COVID-19?
The opportunities, I think, I don't know. What I do know is this, that if we can, as I said, create these conversations, there will be more demand. I think that I've seen, I mean, in Nepal, for example, I know that a lot of people who are asking these questions of how can I give back, how can I be more conscious, how can I be more responsible, they're willing to, buy things from social enterprises and say, we'll hold off on when it can come to us. So I think my hope is that people are willing to act on the feelings that they have right now and are able to sustain those feelings of responsibility and consciousness. A lot of the time it trends during a disaster or crisis, and then it kind of wanes off and everyone's left to their pockets of good. I'm hoping that people will think about this more, and as Sarah was able to demonstrate, they were able to capitalize and put it into their business and show the value of it and be able to sustain it, so that when people are making policy, you can demonstrate it. And that is my hope, that we will have a lot of demonstrated things that we haven't really tried before and been able to pilot during these times. That's
so
my hope.
A third question that I have for you, okay? And once again, this is just mainly your own personal reflection. What is it that you could have done differently, or maybe let's say moving forward, what is it that you think you will do differently now in your business so that you are able to withstand any such future crisis, perhaps?
Me?
Is there something that you would do differently, do you think?
I think that we would not create a reliance. I mean, just the fact that when you're trying to have impact on transport and logistics, something so small as that is, we're so dependent on these things without even thinking about it. And, we because we were a price sensitive market, we were importing goods while we created local markets and sourced locally. So stressing on sourcing locally, but also creating models where people can make it from homes. Why should they have to commute to places to create these things? So looking at our supply chain and cutting out all the unnecessary fat and trying to innovate is what I think I should have done much earlier.
I think one of the things, thank you, Savera, I think that's one of the things that all of us are realizing, right? That we should have trimmed so much fat. We should have done a lot more things which we just didn't do because I think maybe we weren't being pushed out of our comfort zone. So for instance, going virtual and exploring all of these virtual, forums even, I was shying away from it, right? I didn't want to go live because I thought, hey, that's how am I supposed to do it, right? And now we're literally having to do that every single day because I think the collective wisdom which is coming out is really, really important, and best practices which people are mentioning. In fact, for you, Sarah, I found out about the corporate kind of package happening through Kareem because I hosted a guest from Kareem and she mentioned it, right? So I think that's really important. Now for Azima, it's more or less similar question, right? So looking at your model, what is it that this crisis in a way has forced you to do? And what is it that now you're going to do differently because you just realize that this is perhaps more cost effective, perhaps it has greater impact? What are some of the strategies that you are going to continue even after post-COVID, even after this crisis passes?
So, like I mentioned before, that one thing that is our major business focus is to provide video interpretation services. But we realized that when we would interpret for corporate, especially for B2B business, they would prefer us to like go to their events physically, go to their offices physically, and that would bound us at times because we're majorly based in Karachi. We do have services in Lahore and Islamabad, but majorly in Karachi. So the other cities would get ignored or we won't be able to reach to them. But now, considering that everything is happening online, we have had webinars that we have interpreted for people who are living in Islamabad. It was a Islamabad-based company who did it, and we interpreted for them. Secondly, like we always wanted to get into the health sector. Like think about how could we interpret online for people who are walking into hospitals, into clinics, and how could we make that service accessible? Because the other places like banks, like other brick and mortars, they weren't that big of like a concern for us, but health was, considering it is a lot more technical. But now, considering this is something that we had packaged and like it was just in our heads, we hadn't implemented it yet, but just because of now we were able to collaborate and my interpreters, the response that I'm getting is amazing. I realized that it is actually possible and not as technical as we were thinking. And our audience are actually liking it. So we're kind of excited about it in the sense that after we're done with COVID, this and start talking to the hospitals and clinics who are out there that we were able to do it in the crisis, and we think that it's built enough to execute it with you as well. So that's something strategy that we're excited about, we're positive about, and also about communication accessibility. I feel like that like you mentioned, that you never thought going live could create a lot of impact, but now people are just consuming so much content out there. Whatever videos you're producing, you're going live, you're teaching something new online, the response that you're getting is immense. We are fortunate enough to get a lot of new viewership, new suggestions, new people on our forums talking to us, connecting with us. So I just feel like that we always thought that the news in Pakistan should be interpreted, the information should be interpreted, there should be interpreters available on news channels. And that was a struggle that we would always talk with the news channels about. But now just seeing that the government is getting involved in it as well, and they're also feeling that accessibility in communication is important, we are excited that maybe the results that we are collecting, the impact numbers that we are collecting, once everything calms down, we're going to be able to make it more constant.
Thank you so much, Azima. I think this is extremely useful. Thank you, ladies, in general, because I think a lot of the advice that you are offering, a lot of your own experiences, I think that you're sharing are really, really useful. Nirmal, do you think we can go into the questions because we're now hitting our last 6-7 minutes?
Yeah, I got a few questions, and I'll allow all these lovely ladies to think about it a bit. I think there is a question that I got on WhatsApp
Okay.
uh, asking how are you trying to change or redefine your business model with relevance to COVID-19? Until you all think about it, I just thought of sharing two comments, Sama, which came about from the previous question, I believe by Vishan, and also the comment on cutting excess fat. See, we need to be a bit careful on this in terms of not going on that cost cutting approach without a proper basis. Because when you look at cost in any organization, you need to look at both the vertical costs and the horizontal costs. More often than not, we look at the vertical cost cutting, but without looking at the horizontal costs of the value chain. Because actually, the cost that you can reduce in the value chain might be more sustainable than cutting vertical costs. And the analogy that I try to use is that you can't cut part of your body and say that you have lost weight. That's a wrong interpretation. It
Yeah.
might be temporary in nature,
Yeah.
and you're just fooling your own self. So that's one comment on that, and it's very applicable for social enterprises as well, because most social enterprises are looking at being lean and mean anyway. So we need to be really careful of looking at the horizontal aspect of it as well, without just going through the tide like others are doing and try to cut costs. Because once business starts picking up again, you may not have quality talent required to run the business. And we know for a fact that across the globe, recruiting and retaining talent for a social enterprise is extremely tough,
Yeah.
unlike traditional organizations, because the way of how it's structured. The second thing, in terms of the comment or the question on how are we looking at social entrepreneurs from a rural level, because they might not be able to come back to Colombo and the opportunities won't be there. My quick comment on that is that they will also have to relook at their market. They will have to relook at the value addition. And most countries, I believe, especially in Asia and South Asia, will be going towards a buy local, think local, produce local type of an approach, where purchasing local products would be the norm. There'll be import restrictions coming across due to exchange rate fluctuations and other government related requirements. So I think it's extremely critical in order for the small MSMEs and social enterprises in the rural areas to really look at their model. And probably it might also be a scenario where they need to exit the existing business and look at new opportunities that may emerge from a social enterprise point of view. Because end of the day, the job of any entrepreneur, uh, even if it's a social entrepreneur or a traditional entrepreneur, is to solve problems, and not necessarily being emotionally attached to the business per se, even though you might have founded it. I think those are my quick two comments. But I'll go back to all the panelists very quickly within a minute or so. Would you be able to give some idea to the audience on how are you trying to change your business model from the pre-COVID-19 scenario to now and potentially post-COVID-19? Shall we start with Dr. Zara?
So I think the key for my business and also for all the other businesses that I see, particularly ones in social impact, because normally social enterprise in Pakistan work with a lot of talent on ground. So there are a lot of people working on ground. There's a lot of groundwork happening, whether it's health education or any other field in particularly in health tech. But I think what it pushes me to, because we're slowly easing into digitization, but COVID-19 is like it's given us a strong push into it. So I think one thing that I would do is introduce more digitization in everything that we do, be it our app, be it how can we make a clinic more digital friendly or our health education sessions. The second thing is I was a very 9 to 5 office person, like a military head. So one thing that I've understood is that flexible timings, work, KPI setting work. Not everyone has to come to the office. We can work with a smaller space, less people in one space. And it has to be more KPI driven. And the third thing that I've realized is how do you, and this is my learning during COVID-19, which I hope it continues, is how to keep a team connected to the mission and vision. when everything is falling apart and you don't know what's happening in the future. If you're able to keep your team connected and motivated in this difficult time, you will have employees much more productive when they come back to work. And you're very right. I am strongly against cutting out talent because it's very hard to find talent, it's very hard to retain them, and it's very hard to leave them at a point where they also feel motivated enough to come back to you after the crisis is over. So that's something that we are working on, and how to keep that synergy going when everyone is so apart, to make sure that they're connected to the bigger mission and vision of us providing healthcare to people who need it.
Just to insert very quickly over here. So just sharing a few reflections that I've seen from all the conversations that I've had with social enterprises as well as small businesses. Even though it is so difficult for them to survive, they find it very difficult to let anybody of their core team members go. Why? Because it is like a family. The smaller they are, the closer they are. It's very, very close knit. The people who found it, I'm not saying easy at all, but I'm just saying where it's happened more is, 200 layoffs all in one go, because the company is just big enough that it has become more impersonal. Whereas with social enterprises, it's different. Plus, the other thing that I think we can bank on, a lot of the people who end up coming to work for us believe in the mission, believe in the purpose, they understand why they're doing it, and they value that. So they are willing in a way to, cut back on their salaries, look at it as a committee, that maybe when the situation improves and their business is coming back into a company which they love and they own, they're going to be able to, earn the rest of their salary or make up for it. So I think there is also that bit where, in a way, social enterprises are operating like a family, and people are the last to go. The first things that they're looking at are, okay, if we're working in an office, do we really need this? Can we just, remove this from our expenses completely? Can we do that? And so on and so forth, right? So I think that's, in a way, perhaps social enterprises are different than other businesses that I have seen. There is another, yes, go ahead, Azima.
Sorry, I just wanted to add that I agree completely with what Dr. Sara and Summer you all shared. And I think one more thing that I see commonly in the enterprises and what we're doing as well is that to ensure that we're connecting with the audience that we are working for. So we are, constantly trying hard for them to know our vision and mission as well. And for others as well to notice the work that we're doing right now, notice the work of social enterprises, how important it is to have impact creating enterprises around us so that even when the COVID season is over, they don't forget about it. They realize the importance of it and they have the names in their mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's something which all of you guys are really at the helm of, of doing that. There is a question over here. So there's a lady who was saying that she's a certified aromatherapist and Ayurvedic expert. And of course, she's also suffering financially, but she's creating free hand sanitizers and bacterial hand washes. And she's wondering, is there anything else, especially for the transgender community? And she's asking, is there anything else I can do to help and support? So I think she's offering her help. It could be for all of us, and just generally also she's asking for some ideas. So maybe let's start with Savera. Savera, do you think that there are certain ideas that you could offer this lady who is creating free hand washes and sanitizers, and she's an aromatherapist and Ayurvedic expert?
Oh,
what else could she be doing?
That's a great question.
Okay, did I put you on the spot? Okay, that is not the intention.
Sorry, I just also tuned. My internet went out, so I came in and I may have missed a little bit of it. But no, I mean, I think I'm talking about the context of my business. I would love that access to any of that stuff that she's making for the workers that are in their homes. If they can be making stuff at home and just, having some of the transactions during collections and they have access to masks and stuff like that, I think that would be helpful. I just had one point to make on what Nirmal was saying. I think the assumption on cutting costs when that cost is people, I think for a social impact, that's the last thing, because their priority is the people and the planet or the environment, whereas cutting fat is all the other unnecessary stuff. I think prioritizing your team, as Sarah said, is the hardest thing and the most important thing. And the first question that I've seen every social enterprise ask is, what can I do? I've taken on a responsibility to serve these livelihoods. What can I do? So I think the difference is that the people that work, the jobs you create will never be the fact. They will be the reason, the raison d'etre that you do your business. And I think that's a difference between social enterprise and just normal businesses, where the first thing they do is let people go, human lives.
Yeah, I'm probably going to add in another question here in the essence of time, Sama, and this goes to all of you all. Maybe you can quickly, what would be the role of marketing in the future for social enterprises who are struggling, and what do you think will be the role of digital marketing in particular because of social distancing related matters? The traditional business development sales models may not be operational. Can we have some quick thoughts from all three of you ladies on that area?
Can I
We'll
just
start with,
first?
sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Dr. Sarah.
I just wanted to give one idea to that lady that I think can really help her. Is that this is if she's an aromatherapist and works in Ayurveda, I think it's beautiful trying to make videos and push content online just using her own Facebook page or her Instagram page, because what this is going to do is going to help a lot of people who are at home, who have time to try these out. And B, she can create a very critical mass for herself, so that if she does create a business 6 months or 8 months later, when lockdowns are over and there are people available to deliver her products, all the people who are following her now, when they have more time, will be her potential customers. So that's something that she can do. On digital strategy, I think that what I've seen and what we've seen as a community, as a health tech community, is more and more people have moved from TV to digital content in the COVID lockdown, where they could have spent the same time on TV, they chose to do that on digital content. So I think it's absolutely critical for any social enterprise, for any startup to have digital marketing. And I think there are many courses available online that help you to spend little amount of money and be more effective. So something that we learned is how to use $2 boost to get to 2K likes, where people are using $100 or $200. So that's a trick that we learned doing these courses, my digital team. So I think something like this can be very useful when we have less amount of money to spend on digital marketing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm so sorry. I was just going to say that to respond to Salma, this is also something I wanted to say, just like Dr. Sarah, that everyone who wants to do something at this point for their business, they should go online. They should definitely create content. People are consuming so much content. It will help your brand so much. So even if you're not making money right now, it's okay to invest in your brand's name, because once it's over, you will have traction and you have the time to invest in it. So this is like something that I've been telling everyone to do. Go online, produce content. The second question about going digital and the digital marketing, again, I think it's very important to be active on as many platforms as possible. Go live, talk to your audience. I have had friends who would tell me that why should I go live? I wouldn't have, as many followers, as many viewers as other people are getting on their live. But trust me, even if you get like 40, 50 people watching your live, it's creating some audience base. They're going to talk to other people about it. They're going to share to their families, to their friends. So I think you should definitely do it and not overthink it.
Sorry, my internet keeps going out. And the other thing is, I think there's a huge value. I just wanted to add that there's a huge value for wellness and well-being, especially when people are in their homes. I think being able to understand, how their natural, especially, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, we are so resource rich in our natural, produce and ingredients, and understanding that, and, practicing a little bit of well-being. There's so much value in, if you were to create digital content for anyone.
So I'd like to kind of add to that, because I think this is something which we see again and again, that a lot of times social enterprises, because sometimes they're working with communities that are offline, they don't think so much about creating digital content or being available online. Plus the other bit that I find with small social enterprises, again, because they're so busy doing the work, that sometimes they haven't paid enough attention to marketing their work. And I think this is something which is absolutely critical. And one of the things, another question that you asked, how are you retweaking the business model. So for Epiphany personally, because we were working and we were offering counseling and office hours and whatnot, but we started offering a lot of things for free. And then we also started tweaking our own model to be more digital and helping other startups. So if there are startups that are looking to go digital, direct them our way, we're willing to help them. And at the back end, what you were talking about collaboration. So we're collaborating with a website and app development software agency where if people need this done, they'll develop it at cost. They are unable to offer it free of cost or whatever, which is fair enough, but they can actually offer it at cost, which again is a big, huge service right now because people need to go digital yesterday, right? So I think that's something very important as well. So Nirmal, unless the ladies have something else to add, I would actually ask for final comments so we can wrap up this very, very interesting, web session.
Yeah, you're right, Sama, because it's unfortunate that we are time bound. There's a lot more to discuss and so forth. But just two quick comments. I think the power of storytelling is very important for a social enterprise, and the focus should be there because the brand storytelling is very, very important, and that's where the impact can be created. And I think there also has to be focus, and every social entrepreneur has to consciously work on building up the ecosystem, which might get fragmented as a result of COVID-19 and so forth. But working hard with the other players, ensuring that the ecosystem works well and supporting each other is critical. So just before I conclude, maybe we can have a quick concluding remarks from all the panelists, and then we can provide a concluding remark, Sama. We'll start with Dr. Sara. Just quick half a minute concluding remark. Some positivity to all the social entrepreneurs out there.
I think it's a great possibility. If there are two kinds of social entrepreneurial ventures right now. One who are fighting hard to help in the COVID-19 response, and others who are finding it difficult navigating their business. For both, I think the ones who are at the front lines due to any XYZ practice that they're doing, I think they already are the biggest warriors of this war, along with the doctors that are fighting. But I think for social entrepreneurs who are finding it difficult to navigate their business right now, I think this is the time to learn. This is the time to read. This is the time to reflect. And this is the time to re-strategize, re-energize, and reconfigure your business, because digital age is not going anywhere. Again, we were easing into it, now being pushed. So it's a time to get back with your team and have discussions on how you can re-strategize your business so that if, God forbid, this pandemic does not go away for a longer time, or if there's similar calamities in the future, how then will you be able in a phase to help more than you are right now? So I think that's my remarks to all social entrepreneurs watching.
Thank you, Dr. Sara. And what about you, Asima?
I think one thing that has really helped me is to be connected to the community of other entrepreneurs. So my network with Epiphany, my network with the Nest.io, there's the entrepreneurs who are there. We are trying to talk to each other. If we have difficulties, if we have challenges, if we need ideas, we're supporting each other with it. So I think for every entrepreneur who's listening to this, or who's any aspiring entrepreneur who wants to get into something, do get connected to more people, take support, communicate with one another. That's going to help us stay strong and just keep on moving.
Thanks, Asima. And yourself, Savera?
Yeah, I think my message would be just, especially for aspiring entrepreneurs, I think there's so much great work happening. These other two ladies are great examples of it. Guys, I'm already a fan of you, just listening to you. But I think that there's so much that can be done in terms of trying to add to the work that they're doing, add to that kind of supply chain of value that's created, as opposed to trying to reinvent the wheel. I mean, everyone, wants to kind of do their own thing, but I think you can very much do your own thing, but, if it can support the work of someone who's already making so much headway and impact, that's only going to amplify the impact. And if impact is the goal, then I think, collaboration as opposed to reinventing the wheel or thinking, I need to do this new. So I think parking our entrepreneurial egos and prioritizing impact, I think is the way forward for everyone.
Right. So thanks, Avera. So thank you very much, Sama, for inviting me for Even Talks 3. It's not often that you get invited to a panel where there's so much of inspiration, power, and beauty all in one forum. So thank you for that opportunity. It's been interesting. I think most of the people who are watching this can get some ideas, some brutally honest ideas on moving forward and taking their businesses. So right down here from Colombo, Sri Lanka, I would like to wish everybody Ayubowan, which is very traditional in Sri Lanka, for long life. May you be healthy more than anything else. And for all my friends and colleagues and all of you all in Pakistan, I will say Pakistan Zindabad.
Thank you so much, Nirmal. And you know what? It was an absolute pleasure having both of you. There are few countries where Pakistan receives a good reception, and thankfully Sri Lanka is one of them. So I've been to Sri Lanka twice. Both times I was blown away by the hospitality, by the kindness that I see again and again in the people. And I think that kindness is reflected in all of the social entrepreneurs that I know, all of the green entrepreneurs that I know. And I think that is the most important contribution that all of us are doing. And oftentimes people forget to thank us. Sometimes it is a thankless job. So I'm thanking you on behalf of the entire community, because if you didn't do what you are doing, and it's difficult work and it's hard work, and sometimes it is not very well paid work either. But if you didn't do it, the world, would not be such a good place to live in. So I think it was great to see, and I hope that the people who are watching are not just social entrepreneurs. So I hope we've not been talking to our own, to our own community only. So thank you very, very much, and onward and upward. And I know that together we will overcome this crisis. It's just a matter of time. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for having
you.
us.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, Summer, for having us here. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Dr. Nirmal. Bye, Savera.
Okay,
All the
bye-bye.
best.
Bye, Sarah.
Bye.
Samar.